Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Bobo Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, over the weekend, we had another election, and this time in the Czech Republic. And this election also did not really go the way the EU, NATO gang
Sleep at the asleep at the switch.
asleep
Yeah.
at the switch. And this is what really happens is that when you don't steal an election, as NATO and the EU did in Moldova and in Romania, if you don't do that, then people vote the wrong way and the wrong person wins office. So what happened was this Andrej Babiš has been elected, or his party has won the most votes in the parliamentary election. So he will have first dibs to form a government. Now, the problem for him is that, yes, although he won the most votes, he didn't win an outright majority in parliament. So he's going to have to uh, uh, form a coalition. Now, the problem that he has, because he basically has expressed some skepticism about the Ukraine project, and particularly the project of the previous government, which has essentially been voted out of office, of their kind of weapons for Ukraine program.
And the president of the Czech
And
Republic.
exactly. Now, the president, he remains in power. Now, this is where becomes quite interesting because this President Pavel is a former NATO general, an absolute thorough, NATO hack. And he had already said before the vote was held that he would not allow somebody to form a government who was opposed to NATO. That anybody at all who started talking about withdrawal from NATO, they would not be forming a government. Now, Babiš
Yes.
never said that.
It's a little complicated with this guy.
Exactly. Babiš never actually said that, and he had been a prime minister before, so this is not his first rodeo. He'd been a prime minister before. He's a billionaire. He's a very wealthy man. I think he's the richest man in the Czech Republic. So he's not exactly a very likely populist, radical, anti-NATO tribune of the people. I mean, that's not who he is. Nonetheless,
He did kind of sell himself as the Czech Trump.
exactly, and you've now hit the nail on the head, and that's the theme of the some of the Western coverage, which is that he is the Czech Trump. And here we have Deutsche Welle, which declares that Trumpist, ex-PM Babiš wins elections. And he says he wants to cut aid to Ukraine. And now he hasn't, as we'll see, he hasn't really said that he just doesn't like that program whereby
No,
the Czech Republic collects arms from all around the world in order to send to Ukraine.
no, that's Deutsche Welle again. They get so much government money, wants to cut aid to Ukraine. No, that's not the correct way to characterize it. Okay, his position is he doesn't want the Czech Republic to be directly involved in. If it's through the EU, it's through NATO, then he has less of a problem with it. Okay, he doesn't want Czech resources
Right,
directly involved in this.
right,
Okay,
right.
and calling him a Trumpist. Again, it's very curious because it seems to me he's a billionaire, probably a pretty smart guy. He's realized that it's more of a politics as process as politics as movement,
Right.
not about ideology. Okay,
Right.
and I think that's why there's this kind of Trumpist
Right.
analogy being made here.
Right.
He's not against the EU. He's not against NATO.
No.
Okay,
No.
he found a way through, to avoid the mousetrap. Pretty
That's right.
smart guy.
That's right. That's exactly it. That's what he's really about. He plays along. I mean, he's seen
Yeah, he sees what works.
He,
Yeah.
he sees which way the wind is blowing. He's seen Orban's successes in Hungary. He's seen Robert Fico in Slovakia. He's seen the German party, the Alternative for Deutschland. He knows Ukraine is not a popular issue. I mean, this seems to be universal. Even in Poland, irrespective of what Donald Tusk and Radek Sikorski say, it's not popular in Poland either. They're not happy by the fact that Ukrainians just move into Poland and can apparently just simply live on the government dime when everybody else is really not doing terribly well. And this is very much the case in the Czech Republic. I mean, the Czech Republic, used to be quite prosperous. I mean, it's still relatively prosperous. But people are having a hard time having, the people, particularly healthcare costs, inflation. People are very disgruntled about their conditions of life. And when they think, well, again, Ukrainians are coming in, apparently right away, they get all the government benefits that the Czechs are supposed to be entitled to.
And since with the advent of the Ukraine project, the Czech government has had to cut subsidies for students and the
Yeah.
elderly. Two groups of people you don't want to mess
That's
with.
right, exactly. So it's not popular, and then and now this program of sending arms, apparently the Czech Republic gathering arms from all over the world in order to send to Ukraine, that's not popular. And Babiš saw this and ran with it. But that doesn't mean that he somehow any of this he takes particularly seriously.
So the President Pavel, he cannot, if he plays out what he said, he will not allow a politician and party to form a government if they're anti-NATO. It doesn't apply to this guy.
Right,
It
exactly.
doesn't.
That's right. So it says that with over 90% of the votes counted, the right-wing populist Arno of billionaire, he's not right-wing. I mean, that's again a misnomer. They're
A
pulling it right-wing.
misnomer.
Yeah.
No, what he did was he collected very select
Yes.
populist issues and
Yes.
appropriated it to himself. But it doesn't make him right wing at
That's
all.
not at all. A self-described Trumpist who opposes continued military assistance for Ukraine had garnered 36% of the vote. Calling the result historic, Babiš said that after the election that he hopes to form a one-party cabinet despite not having won an absolute majority of the vote. And then the center-right Spolu Together coalition headed by this Prime Minister Fiala is on track to take 22.4% of the vote. Now, as we've said over and over again, it's striking that the pro-EU, pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine faction, they're always struggling. Wherever we go and look at an election, they're somehow struggling. I mean, if there were any enthusiasm for going to war, they'd be doing well. Earlier on Saturday, the Liberal Conservative bloc Stan was polling around 10%, with numerous others also garnering support. Observers fear ANO's victory in the Chamber of Deputies vote could spell trouble for Ukraine. The Czech Republic under Fiala had been a steadfast ally to Kiev. Saturday's result could further affect the balance of power within the EU as well, with the Czech Republic potentially joining truculent, well, I like that word, truculent Hungary and Slovakia in opposition to Brussels. Hungary and Slovakia have rejected Ukraine military aid and challenged EU sanctions against Russia. Babiš has dubbed himself a peacemonger during the campaign and promised a Czech first approach to leadership. Doesn't sound the most original, sounds like he's just been copying what Orban is doing, and Trump himself.
Yeah, but see, in like so many countries, that's an open lane.
Right.
Anyone that seizes it is going to be
right.
rewarded.
That's right. It's an open lane. And then though Arno has come out on top, he does not want an absolute majority. But that has not kept Babiš from stating he does not intend to form a coalition government. Should his one-party plan fail, the likely partner would be the far-right Freedom and Direct Democracy Party, which is polling around 12%. Observers say the SPD has spent far more than all other parties on online advertising. It is also accused of using TikTok accounts to systematically spread pro-Russian propaganda and support anti-system parties through manipulated engagement.
Whose quote is that?
Is that, yeah, exactly. It says, as a result, the European Commission on Thursday called an emergency meeting with the operators of TikTok, leading to the removal of several bots from the platform in the context of Czech elections.
Oh yeah, but not the European Commission's bots.
No, but that's right. Now you're already getting a sense of where all this is going. You know that when if he starts trying to form a government and bring, you know, that he's going to run into problems. And as we'll see, you know, further on, you know, that he's going to start running into serious problems, particularly with President Pavel. And then here we have also Politico 5 key takeaways from the Czech election. And here's number 3, wild card up the president's sleeve. Czech President Petr Pavel, who has discretion over appointing the prime minister, will meet all the parties that entered parliament on Sunday. Traditionally, the president tasks the leader of the winning party to form a government. Once a government with at least 101 seat majority is established, the president appoints a prime minister and ministers, but the government must still win a vote of confidence. Pavel previously said he wouldn't appoint ministers who advocate Czechia's withdrawal from NATO or the EU. So he wouldn't appoint ministers, not even the prime minister, he wouldn't appoint ministers who advocate Czechia's withdrawal from NATO or the EU. It's really very, very good that you know, Babiš was accused at some point, said, yay, Babiš is going to hold a referendum on Czech membership of NATO. So no, I'm not going to hold a referendum. Well, of course he's not going to hold a referendum. We know how the referendum is going to go. The referendum will be overwhelmingly against NATO. They're always going. That's why they never have a referendum anywhere on NATO membership. So no, I'm not going to hold a referendum. But this is, you know, this is absolutely unacceptable to have any political parties, you know, even though they've been voted, people have voted for them, they've voted them into office, but if they advocate withdrawal from NATO or the EU, they will not be appointed to the government. He also said he's consulting lawyers on the question of whether to block Babiš over the conflict of interest posed by his large agriculture empire, Agrofert. The first potential situation now appears
what is the conflict of interest?
I don't quite get it either. I mean, he's a billionaire. He's a businessman. I mean, I don't know. I mean, presumably you can get around it by, you know, putting it in a blind trust or having somebody else run it. I mean, that's how Trump got around, you know, when he's president. Somebody else runs the Trump organization while he's president.
A prime minister. Yeah.
No, when I said Trump, I mean that was I was just saying Trump. Trump got around it by he had to sign over control of the Trump organization during the time that he was president. The first potential situation now appears much less likely as SPD underperformed, and the far left Stachilo fell short of the 5% needed to enter parliament. Both parties are anti-NATO and Euro-skeptic. But the conflict of interest over Agrofert is still on the table. Czech law bars officials from owning or controlling a business that would create a conflict with their governing function. Again, I mean, it seems to be very easy to get around this. You know, you put things.
There's a lot of politicians. There's a lot of politicians in the EU that are very, very rich. Okay?
They're very rich. I mean, you're just blind trust. I mean, it's very simple. This doesn't mean that ministers can't own a business, just that they are mandated to prioritize the public interest over their own interests. I don't understand that.
Well, I mean, look. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you get a technocrat to run the agricultural ministry, okay, and have Chinese walls there. I mean,
but that's it. It's very
it's all doable.
Of course it's doable. I mean, you know, I mean, it's been done. It's not like it's not
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
happened. You get a lot of politicians that are very, very rich, and they own lucrative businesses, and they get around. And I mean, Berlusconi was the richest man in
In
Italy. I mean,
Italy.
you know, so that problem is solved.
I miss him. I miss him. He was such a character.
Babiš said in the television debate ahead of the election that he would solve the conflict of interest, but he did not specify how. The possibility is slim, but Pavel still has the constitutional option to decline appointing Babiš as prime minister if he believes the proposed solution is insufficient.
Okay, so here we go.
Exactly.
There's always somebody that has a veto over the people, right?
Exactly. Always, always.
Always. Yeah.
Um, and then support for Ukraine could decrease. Babiš campaigned on reducing support to Ukraine and prioritizing the Czech Republic. He previously said he doesn't support Ukraine's membership in the EU. He famously criticized the Prague-led ammunition initiative, which delivers millions of rounds to Kiev, and he pledged to cancel it, suggesting that NATO should run the scheme instead. Exactly what I said. Yeah, just we don't want the Czech people to be paying for it. And the Czechs don't particularly want to be paying for this. And then we are deeply pro-European and pro-NATO, of course, Babiš said at the press conference following the results. So this is very important, that he said this. So, all the news stories that suggest, oh, he's just a Viktor Orban figure. He's not an Orban figure. The EU has 27 members. Ukraine is not a member of the EU. We want, obviously, to talk about Europe, about European citizens, about energy prices, the migration pact. So basically, he's against the Green New Deal, and like everyone else, he doesn't think the EU is doing anything about the immigration, the mass immigration issue.
Yeah, the EU's energy policy is not benefiting the people of
No,
the
it does
Czech
not.
Republic.
And now this is where it was interesting, because this was a story from a few weeks ago for also Politico, which says Babiš is on track to return as Czech prime minister. The president can say no. So this was already being floated even during the campaign, that even if he wins, Pavel does not necessarily have to appoint him a prime minister. Right-wing populist Babiš is tipped to win October's election, but the president is weighing barring him over his business interests and ambivalence toward NATO. And says, he is hot favorite to win. His political adversary, President Petro Pavel, has a wild card constitutional option of not appointing Babiš to the premiership. Former Army General Pavel, for former Army General Pavel, there are two big problems with a 71-year-old firebrand that could exclude him: a potential conviction over his giant agricultural empire and the tycoon's ambiguous relationship with NATO. You can't even have an ambiguous relationship. It's like, oh, it's not even, oh, he's opposed to NATO. He's ambiguous. But because NATO is
this is all, it's elevated to, to your religious beliefs.
It's religious, exactly.
You can't be a Protestant because it's a Catholic church. Okay?
That's right. It's like exactly in a more devout time, there's some skepticism about, hey, I don't think this philosopher is wholly on board with the Christian faith. I mean, he says he is, but if you read his writings carefully, there's a kind of ambiguity that we can discern.
It's like during the Inquisition. So why is it you don't eat pork?
Yes.
Inquiring minds
Want
want
to
to
know. Yeah,
know.
that's right. Yeah. The nuclear option of a no from the president is seen as unlikely. But Pavel does say he's consulting lawyers on the question of whether to block Babiš. I love the way he's consulting lawyers. I mean, it's like, he's the president. You're the president. You're supposed to basically make the decisions as president. What are you doing consulting lawyers? He notes he doesn't yet have a clear position, but the two men are due to hold talks on the matter shortly.
Yeah, probably tomorrow.
Yes. The debate over Babiš's suitability for office starkly reveals the impending strategic headache that he's likely to pose to the EU and NATO if he wins and teams up with Viktor Orban and Robert Fico.
Yeah, but see, this is this lack of self-reflection, Politico. Well, why are people voting for these
Exactly.
People? And why?
Exactly. Because we keep going through these things. You remember we had all the panic about Robert Fico, and Fico won. After telling the Slovaks, you cannot vote for Fico, then he won. So now they go the Babiš. And of course, we'll have that in France. Whether Le Pen runs in 2027 or it'll be Jordan Bardella, but we will have that hysteria about whether France, whether the national rally will prevail. And then so this Babiš is awaiting a verdict from the Prague District Court over whether he defrauded the EU of 2 million euros so that his large agro-fed business empire could receive subsidies intended for medium-sized businesses. So whenever I read this, I'm straight away puzzled. Why does the Prague District Court decide this? I mean, if the EU is the one that's been defrauded, is not an issue that the EU would decide. I mean, if the EU is the injured party, then the EU would presumably file its case in one of the EU court. So I don't quite know why does a Prague District Court get to decide. I mean, it was the same thing with Marine Le Pen. Why is a Parisian court deciding this? Because the EU was supposedly the injured party there, that supposedly she swindled the EU out of money. Well, what business is that of the Parisian court? So let the EU decide that.
I don't know the intricacies of the law here, obviously, but it just kind of makes me feel that, well, maybe we just should open up a case.
We can open up a case.
There you go. And then it's a cudgel.
It's a cudgel, but also
I don't know the intricacies of law in the Czech Republic. Okay.
No, I don't know either. But he's a billionaire. We're talking about 2 million euros. I mean, that's pocket change. I mean, if he's a billionaire, 2 million euros. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of money for someone else, but for a billionaire, that isn't a lot of money. I mean, it's basically it's pocket change. The case hinges on whether the Stork's Nest farm was sliced out of Agrofert to make it look smaller, to make it look like a smaller independent business. Unless new evidence is found, the court is obliged to take its lead from Prague's High Court, which in June overturned an earlier ruling clearing Babiš of wrongdoing. Well, that's handy. In June, they overturned an earlier, so a court earlier said that he had done nothing wrong. And then in June, just a few months ago, before the election, the Prague's High Court had said, "No, I don't think he should be cleared. I think he defrauded the EU." That is handy. Back in June, so you see, this is the way they always operate. Suddenly open up a case. Hey, let's even though it's already been decided, he had already been cleared.
Show me the man, I'll find the crime.
That's right. Back in June, when Pavel was asked whether he would appoint Babiš, he replied he hoped there would be legal clarity on the Stork's Nest case by the election, saying he would have to wait and find out how the court case ends. And again, I don't even understand, because even if they find that he defrauded the EU, whatever, 2 million euros, well, what has that got to do with whether he's just been voted into office? It doesn't matter that he's been, defrauded or not defrauded. He has won an election. You win an election.
All the more so to echo the same point in a different way. This is all obviously in the Czech media, so they still voted for him.
They still vote, exactly. exactly. And this
It's
was
like what was it, George Santos? This is, it's like the George Santos paradigm. He should be removed. He's an embarrassment.
right.
He's a serial liar. And George and I always said the same thing. Let the voters decide.
Let the voters say. And the British, back in the 19th century, you had all these Irish Republicans who were winning these elections. They were all in prison. And nonetheless, the people were voting for them. They were allowed to stand, but nonetheless, they were in prison, so they
Not to
couldn't.
serve.
Yeah, they couldn't exactly serve because they were in prison, so they couldn't go into parliament. But nonetheless, they were allowed to stand. It just so happened that they couldn't take up their seat. So people are entitled to vote for whomever they want. Happened in the United States as well. With they had these the peace candidate, forgot his name. He was in prison, and Debs,
Debs.
exactly, Eugene Debs.
Well, and where I came from, Mayor Curley, he was in prison for embezzlement, and they reelected him as mayor.
That's
I think he ran the mayor office from his prison cell. My grandfather knew him.
really.
I know the story.
Uh, um, and then it now transpires that the verdict will only come after the election. That's handy.
Oh, who would have thought?
That's right. Babiš denies all allegation. The core discussion comes down to the potential conflict of interest posed by Agrofert. Pavel said he was studying the legality of the matter and would take it up with Babiš. Oh, I love this. You're studying, the law books. Agrofert isn't the only problem. Pavel also stated on a podcast that he wouldn't appoint ministers who advocate Czechia's withdrawal from NATO or the EU. Well, so Pavel gets to decide these things. Babiš is a NATO skeptic who has questioned the alliance's mutual support commitments, its support for Ukraine, and its plans to expand the military budget. Back in 2023, when he was running for president, he vehemently rejected the idea of Czechia sending troops if Poland or one of the Baltic countries were attacked.
Oops. Look, everybody, there's periodically there are public opinion polls. The much vaunted Article 5 of the Washington Treaty establishing the North Atlantic Treaty Organization from Lisbon all the way to Riga. I mean, a little bit more that with the Baltic Chihuahuas, they're a little bit of an outlier. But the rest of Europeans, so in Portugal, they say, well, somebody attacked Turkey. Should we invoke the Article 5? Well, I don't know. That's pretty far away. I mean,
That's always
maybe tell me a little bit about what
right.
happened here.
Exactly.
There's no, what I'm saying is that there is no automatic kick it. Even Article 5 doesn't say that. People claim
No, they don't know exactly.
but I mean, my point is that if somebody if let's say Iraq attacked Turkey, just parenthetical, the Greeks going to say that's nothing to do with
No,
us. We're not going to go to war for Turkey. Are you out of your mind?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even if Israel attacked Turkey, the Greeks going to say it's had nothing to do
No,
with
no,
that.
no. That's right. I mean, as far as Greece is concerned, their main threat to Greece is not
Is Turkey.
Russia. It's Turkey. That's what they. Why does Greece have something? I think it spends more than anyone else in the in NATO on its military. Why? Because it's continually
Yes, and
worried about
everyone
Turkey.
interoperability. The Greeks are not particularly interested in integration either.
No,
Okay.
no, no, no,
Okay.
no, 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 no. That's right. Um, and I don't think Greece is going to support Turkey's membership of the EU. I think that's probably going to be put on the back burner, and that was I mean, when we talked about how Antonio Costa came up with this wizard idea, hey, we can start the Ukraine accession talks without having to get Hungary's support. We can just do it by a majority vote. and then we'll leave the final vote, hoping that Orban won't be there anymore. And then right away, Greece said, I don't think I like this method, because somebody will have the bright idea, hey, let's start
Do
the
it to
Turkey accession talks without necessarily getting unanimity. So,
Yeah, it just, the amount of time these people spend on circumventing their own rules, it's extraordinary.
right, exactly. That's right. That's right. um, he backtracked from these remarks the same day and did so again when Russian drones entered Polish airspace this month. Babiš,
Again, alleged,
yes,
some reports claim that
that's right. Exactly.
they're stating this as a matter of fact. It is not.
We're gonna have to talk a little more about that in our live stream about the drone fever. This is the sort of this is
Drone fever over drone gate.
exactly. This is going to be the fall of drones. This is
Oh, yeah, you outdid me on that one. Good. Yeah.
Babiš has squarely rejected the idea of leaving NATO or the EU, telling Politico he's a guarantor of staying in both. Still, his geopolitical stance on the EU and NATO will become a pressing topic if Babiš decides to form a coalition with the Euro-skeptic far-right Freedom and Direct Democracy, which currently sits third in the polls. And then all of the country's mainstream parties have ruled out working with Babiš after the election.
Nothing new there.
And then Pavel signaled he would have to consider such strategic questions in making his decision. I assume that I represent the mandate I announced in advance. That means a clear commitment of the Czech Republic to NATO and the European Union. I love this kind of talk. I am a mandate, and this mandate.
Whoa, 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 whoa. So does the other guy. Okay. He just won the majority votes, the majority of people that voted. So he has a mandate too.
Yes, right. And Czech Republic is like many European states, which are essentially prime ministerial government. Yeah. So in other words, the prime minister is actually more important than the president. The president's a kind of a ceremonial position. So the president really doesn't get to overturn the decisions of prime ministers.
All the more so, Pavel looks like a statue, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Yeah,
just kind of stands there. I don't know if he's marble or bronze, but
that's right.
Yeah, he's a man remarkably devoid of personality. Okay.
Yes. When forming the government,
I mean, how important? I'm sorry, I don't want to demean people here too much, but I mean, how important is a Czech general, George?
Well, I've always assumed that they promote all these East Europeans just to show how integrated the NATO apparat is. Well, we have this Czech NATO general. We're holding these senior positions in NATO held by a Czech. Oh, we've got a Croatian general here. That's really so that's what I assume. That's why they give these.
Oh, it's affirmative action. Okay, yeah.
It is exactly. It's affirmative action. That's why why does Kaja Kallas get to run the EU foreign policy? Well, they wanted to show, hey, look, we're not always giving these jobs to Danes and
well, I think we're not always Dutch. Giving jobs to smart people.
No, I don't think so at all. But we mustn't show that we're biased towards the West. We have to show how we've integrated the East. I mean, that was the calling card, because she was openly complaining that the EU is ignoring the East. I mean, that was, she was doing the whole affirmative action thing, that she campaigned for that job. When forming the government, I will pay close attention to ensure that those who will represent the country in the executive branch continue to follow this line. This line, not they continue to follow the wishes of the voters, the people who voted them into office. They follow the line, whatever that line is. So Pavel said on the podcast. And if that is not the case, it would, of course, be a problem for me personally to agree without reservation with someone who, from my perspective, harms the interests of the country and
So,
its.
I mean, do people refer to him as my liege or, your
Well,
Royal Highness?
it occurred to me that, well, there's a simple solution. I mean, you could resign from your
Yeah, yeah,
office and
yeah.
and then have a new fresh presidential election. See who'll win. He strikes me as being not terribly bright.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean
yeah.
that face, I mean, just does there's just something about it that doesn't convey great
The
intelligence.
face and the coif. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and the beard too.
That's
Okay.
right.
I mean, he's like every time I see him, I think of Old Spice.
Um, and then here's the Czech ammo lifeline for Ukraine comes under fire at home.
Oh, isn't that a cute
It's
title? Oh,
very cute.
thank
They
you.
must have worked hard on that one.
Yeah, what was the one I get? Iraqi head looks for arms. I remember seeing that once. Okay, all right. So Czech ammo lifeline comes under
Yeah.
fire.
Well, of
Okay.
course, the greatest headline ever was the I think it was the New York Daily News headless body in a topless bar. The
Yeah, that's good. That's like the all-time winner. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Um,
Top that one.
that's right. The Czech Republic successful at the Sasol, blah blah, and Andrej Babiš said the initiative, which had already delivered 1 million rounds this year, costs too much in taxpayer money that should be spent on our own people. He called the drive rotten, and he said in an interview, and it will be scrapped if he returns to power. Czech government, under the leadership of that, has defended the ammunition initiative, and any halt to the initiative would be a real gift to Putin. Those who talk about it are gambling with Europe's security. Prague began the ammunition effort in 2024 in response to US delays in sending shells to Ukraine. Well, it wasn't really a great idea. It doesn't seem to have gone down very well among the Czechs. And so the initiative collects Western donations of ammunition and also buys shells on the global market and sends the combined total to Kiev. This eases the burden on other countries. And organizers said the growing number of donations is proof of its success. And then, anyway, however, anno skepticism about the ammunition effort has struck a chord with Czech voters. A June poll by the STEM organization asked about the level of Czech support for Ukraine. 49% said it was too much, 29% said it was about right, and 6% said it
Well,
was.
I think, I mean, you're much better with numbers than I am, but that seems to be the election breakdown right
Mm,
there.
roughly, because of all the other
Probably.
parties. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. Now, keep in mind, the Czechs are not, they don't love the Russians either, and they
Nope.
never have.
Nope.
So in other
Yeah.
words, you're just saying, oh, this is pro-Russian or whatever. I mean, there's never been any great love for the
Well, I
Russians
mean,
among the Czechs.
I don't know what the situation is with the Czechs and the Slovaks, because remember the amicable divorce after
Right,
the Cold War.
right.
But Czechs don't like anybody, and no one likes Czechs.
I think
Okay.
that's right. I think that's absolutely right.
I lived, well, you're in Eastern Europe. I lived there a long time too. I mean, nobody likes anyone.
No, no, but the Czechs in particular, and
And the Hungarians hate the Romanians.
the Hungarians hate the Romanians, and but the Czechs was a real problem. I mean, because essentially it was a failed state. I mean, in both incarnations, the one between the wars and the one after in both incarnations it was a failed state. The Slovaks never were happy with the Czechs. They thought they were continually subordinate to the Czechs. And so they couldn't wait to get out. That was in 1939. And then the moment communism collapsed, the Slovaks again wanted to get out, and then leave
But
aside.
I remember, I mean, I'm sure you remember the literature too. and maybe you can explain it. There was this kind of this romance with Czechoslovakia. There was
Yeah, 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 yeah.
this very weird affection for this
Right.
country here. And it
Yes,
was
there was.
completely artificial for its entire existence. And George pointed out that with something many overlook, as soon as the Nazis showed up, the
Right. Boom,
Slovak,
boom,
we're
boom.
out of here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So basically, it was a failed state. I mean, the minorities, all of the minorities wanted out in 38, 39. And then when they recreated the state, and incidentally, the Czechs threw out, I mean, that was one of the most horrific things
Right,
done was
right.
like kicking out the Germans. They kicked out a lot of Hungarians as well, not all of them, but they kicked out a lot of Hungarians. And yeah, and it was so the moment this, but you're right, this romance, but Czechoslovakia and it was, I don't know if it's
Benish, all that.
Benish, exactly. They love Benish. And then they did things that was very strange. They kind of hailed a writer like Kafka, who was a German writer, as somehow a Czechoslovak writer.
Right. Well, I remember when I lived in Poland, they always referred to the Czechs as rabid Germans.
Yeah, well, yes, yes, that's right. Well, I mean, it was a part of Austria. I mean, that's it. So,
Well, I'll tell you, for Slavic languages, um, Polish spoken, beautifully educated. It's very beautiful. Russian also, but Czech, oh man, that's a hard. There are not enough vowels. Maybe that's why it failed because they don't have vowels in their words. Most of us cannot pronounce words
yes,
without vowels.
yes, exactly. It's very, very hard. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and but this is very interesting. And then Czech frontrunner Babiš rules out lifting ban on sanctioned Russian media. I thought he was pro-Russian. Liberals fear that populist victory in next month's election could tilt Prague in Moscow's direction. Moscow's direction. And then here's Babiš, leader of the right-wing populist ANO party. That is on.
Everybody, I'm sorry, George, but we cover a lot of elections here, and to Politico's credit, and I say that with air quotes here, but they follow it to find fault
Yes,
to to the most minute detail.
right.
You know, all of their friends that mimic the Western liberal agenda, they never get this kind of scrutiny.
Right.
Never.
Never, never, never. No, 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 exactly. Um, that's right. This is what they do. So the moment they sniff out, hey, there's an election coming up, and our guy isn't doing well in the polls. And therefore, boom, Politico goes into action. Moscow, TikTok, Russia, Putin, the whole thing. It's there right away. It's like before you even knew there was an election, you already told that there's a massive Russian interference.
Yep.
So that's right. So one of Arno's deputy chairman, Radek Vondracek, hinted at unblocking Russian channels at a conference that took place last Saturday.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Alert the
Before
media.
backtracking.
Alert the media.
Exactly. Well, he quickly backtracked. He hints at unblocking Russian channels. I don't care what Mr. Vondracek said. This is Babiš speaking. I didn't even listen to it, but we're definitely not planning or supporting anything like that. It's complete nonsense. If anyone wants to push such foolish ideas, it certainly won't be within the ANO movement. Well, that gives you a sense of Babiš. I mean, he keeps saying he's populist, but why would he be opposed to it? I mean,
And why
you don't have to agree with RT, you don't have
and
to like
why is
RT, but you want freedom of speech.
why is Pavel so upset?
Yes. This is
What,
Babiš.
what's the deal? What's
Right.
the deal?
Exactly.
Look, Babiš is a smart guy. He looked at the electorate, looked at the polls, and engineered himself a victory. He's not only a successful businessman, I believe that on face value, and he reads the political math. It's not hard.
That's right. Exactly. Political, yeah, exactly. And to be honest, he comes across as a kind of Giorgio Maloney type. He talks
There
a
you
good game.
go. There you
Yeah.
go.
And
And that's what Georgia Maloney, that's her lasting legacy because she's created a political category for us.
exactly, George,
What a
exactly,
trailblazer she is. So,
exactly, George, exactly. Yeah, talk a good game during the campaign, and then lo and behold, you're suddenly hanging out with Ursula von der Leyen.
I bet she gave good speeches in Italian. I love the sound of Italian. I bet, a
I
little
like it. I like
little
it too.
blonde lady
Yep.
yelling, doing a little Mussolini thing. I
Yeah,
bet
yeah,
people
yeah. She
love
does
it.
all that. She was very good at that. Very, very good at that. She is yeah, good speaker, and she has that kind of energy. She's not very big, but she has a sort of real energy to her.
And we've learned she has amazing facial expressions. Okay.
That is definitely a calling card. The eye roll.
Or maybe she just has an aversion to French. Who knows? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I can see, you're sitting, you've got Macron on one side, Merz on the other side. I mean, you can see, she's just rolling her eyes. Do I have to listen to
Yeah,
the?
but to her credit, people have accused me for being a support. I'm not a supporter of hers. Okay, I think as a political character, I find her fascinating. Okay, because in all fairness to her, I mean, Italy is not really the most let's see, gender equal place. It's a very machismo place. I mean, there's a lot of machismo in Italian culture. For her to make it to the top,
Oh yeah, no, she
she's got balls, that lady.
right.
Okay,
She's very
I
successful.
admire that. I admire that.
No, no, she's very,
But
very
look at that Japanese lady. Now they got a prime minister. Talk about a male culture. That's
right.
pretty amazing. Okay,
Yes, yes,
and of course the great trailblazer herself, Margaret Thatcher.
yes, yes. Yeah, no, that's right. Um, yeah, and then here there are fears among liberal parties that should Babiš win the Czech election and become prime minister again, and that Prague would join Budapest and Bratislava
Oh
in a pro-Russian bloc at the heart of Europe. It's funny when you say Prague, Budapest, and Bratislava, you think, hey, well, that sounds like a cruise for the summer. Yeah, we'll start in Prague, then we'll go on to Bratislava, and then we'll go on to Budapest. But that sounds pretty nice. Three beautiful cities.
no! Say again, this is the non-stop propaganda
Right,
trope here.
right.
Pro-Russian bloc.
That's right. Exactly.
Reiterate.
That's right.
Let's reiterate,
Yep.
everyone. In Romania, there are no pro-Russia parties.
No.
In the Czech Republic, there are no pro-Russia parties.
Right.
In Slovakia, there are no pro-Russian parties. In Moldova, there are no pro-Russian parties. In Georgia, there are no pro-Russian parties. But according to
That's
Politico,
right. But this is the shorthand. The moment you have anyone that you don't like, it used to be, well, he's the authoritarian. And that's it. These are the categories of authority. So Orban is an authoritarian. Fico is also an authoritarian now. But that's not enough. You have to something else. He's authoritarian and pro-Russian. So it's like authoritarian pro-Russian. So, but that used to be, well, he's just authoritarian. But now you now have these two things that are always said about you. But then you never have to supply any evidence. You think, oh, well, he's authoritarian and he's pro-Russian. Well, he can't be a good guy. Obviously, I don't want like him. Vondracek, speaking at a panel discussion organized by the Organization for the Defense of Freedom of Speech.
oh my God.
So,
Continue reading. I already read it. Continue reading.
but so let's say there's an organization for the defense of freedom of speech. So you give a talk, and then somebody asks you, well, hey, how about then if you believe in freedom of speech, how about unblocking Russian TV channels? And then you say, well, all right. I mean, since I believe in the freedom of speech, I should do it. Boom! You have to that wrong answer. Had argued that bans these days are plain stupid. Yeah. Russian media, including Kremlin-backed RT Sputnik, Russia 24, RTR, Planeta, and TV Center, were banned under EU sanctions following the Kremlin's full-scale.
Full scale.
It's always full scale. And that's it. So that That was but I thought it was just interesting the fact that Babiš immediately, this was completely inconsequential. He could easily have parried that question and said, look, it's just not something I'm thinking about now. I'm concerned about pocketbook issues. Czechs are worried about cost of living, healthcare costs, or whatever. I'm not concerned now about RT. But instead, he went into this whole, last thing I would ever dream of doing is
Yeah,
legalizing RT.
but see, George did it again. How many slides did we go through? A lot.
Yeah,
But did they focus on what the Czech voter was interested
right.
in?
Yeah,
No, it's always what the elites are interested in. It always comes from an ideological trajectory. Western liberalism that is perfectly fine. It's only the problem with Western liberalism is that it has enemies. Okay,
yeah,
those enemies are never justified.
right.
Okay, I
Exactly.
mean it's always this top-down narrative. I
Right.
mean, where did they go to the local McDonald's and ask a couple of work, hey, who did you vote? Who did you vote
No, no,
for?
no, nobody ever does.
No,
No,
no, but nobody, no, because they don't have agency.
no,
They have no
no.
agency. Only elites have
Right.
agents.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. But we had the same thing when we covered the Moldova election. Is we went article after article about, that Russia, 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 and then some reporter blurts out towards the end of the article, well, things are really bad in Moldova. The economy is, there's been, stagnant growth, high energy costs. And Moldovans are really very unhappy about the cost of, the cost of living and the standard of living. Um, oh, well, maybe that might explain why Maya Sandu is not doing well in the
Just a
polls.
hunch.
Just
Just a
exactly, just
hunch.
a hunch. Maybe we were going up, down a rabbit hole, chasing up Russian interference and TikTok and everything else. There's actually a reason why these politicians are
And,
unpopular.
and meanwhile, Sandu and her circle are angling for their next job in the EU.
Yep. Yep, yeah. Maya Sandu has done very well for the EU. She's pulled out these fraudulent elections one after another, and I think she probably will be rewarded
Oh yeah.
down the road. Yeah,
World Bank,
yeah,
IMF,
exactly.
high level EU Commission.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, oh, yeah,
yeah,
oh yeah, absolutely. Who knows? She might become president of the United Nations General Assembly one day. Okay. Or she'll join the McCain Institute
I
or
but that, with Annalena Baerbock, she did disastrously in that last election. The Green vote collapsed, and then she gets rewarded by becoming president of the UN General Assembly. You're sitting there watching this and say, "What the hell? What the hell is that woman doing there?" I mean, she was a terrible foreign minister, an absolute joke, and she's there, oh, you're president of the UN
what she
General
should have
Assembly.
done is changed your name and disappeared.
Yeah,
Okay. Go into some kind of, political witness protection program or
yeah,
something like
it's
that.
just an amazing thing of how these people are rewarded. Like that horrible woman in New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, also absolute disaster, totally unpopular in her own country, and then lo and behold, she gets some big job. I think it was one of the Soros organizations that gave her a big job. It's just kind of just amazing that you just move on to some fancy job after making an absolute fool of yourself while in office. And
See, that's one of the reasons why the Soviet Union collapsed, okay? Because competence wasn't always the most valued. It
right,
was loyalty, patronage. You're loyal to
right,
this Politburo figure, and then you get promoted and all
right,
of that.
right, yeah,
I mean, this is being duplicated. But I
yeah.
mean, these people are paid a lot of
Yeah.
money.
And Annalena Baerbock absolutely demanded when she was involved in those negotiations to form a government, I need to be foreign minister. I have to be foreign minister, foreign minister, foreign minister. She had no background whatsoever in any of this. I mean, she knew nothing about her world, but she demanded that position, and she was ridiculous. I mean, she really wanted to send tanks into Moscow to go arrest Putin. I mean, that was pretty much her attitude to
Oh,
the
it wasn't
war.
she? It
Let's just
wasn't
send
her
German
that
tanks into Moscow.
And wasn't she? And obviously, it was a trick question, but I'm going to make sure it was her when she was asked if should Russia return Voronezh to Ukraine.
That wasn't her. That was the Liz Truss.
List. Oh, even better. Even
Liz
better.
Truss,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
who who not only was kicked out as prime minister, but kicked out in the next parliamentary election. She's kind of not a prime minister and not even an MP anymore.
And is she a China hawk now?
Yeah, she's kind of reinvented herself as a populist. I mean, I can't think of a less populist politician than Liz Truss, but now she's a populist, trying to reinvent it. She's a Trumpian, and a kind of, I guess, currying favor with Nigel Farage. But somehow this really one of the worst kind of arrogant elitists, now suddenly pretending to be populist.
And they all make Maloney look bad.
That's right.
Oh, there's so much fun we have with these
Yes.
people here. It
Yes.
just they exude incompetence.
Yeah.
Okay, exude
That's
it.
right. That's right.
All right, everybody, that's our running commentary on Eastern European politics. See, you have to remember, everyone, George and I have a foundation in all of this because we're two very rare people, maybe for many reasons, but at least for the following reason. George and I used to study Eastern European communist parties.
Yes.
We were really big on that,
Yeah.
okay? George and I collectively know more than most people have
Right.
ever known about it. And so I'm not saying that's a predicate for my commentary today, but it's a good to have a foundation to look about how politics, the trajectory and the changes and all that. How unpopular was communist rule in Hungary, in Poland, and Czechoslovakia?
Right.
Nobody wants to talk about those things,
Yeah.
okay? And it's very interesting the interests and desires of these people, how it transcends political systems and ideologies.
Yeah.
That's something very few people think about, okay?
Yeah.
Because they draw just a very thick line. You can't do that. That's not academic, it's not logical.
Yes. Yeah. No. No. That's right. I mean, the whole thing is of a kind of very interesting that and rarely been studied. We talk about the Soviet jackboot and the Soviet yoke, and remember all that Reaganite rhetoric. Um, but it was Eastern Europe was relatively peaceful, quiet, and quite doing quite well throughout the Cold War. There was nothing in Eastern Europe comparable to the wars in Central America, which
And
went
and
on for year
George,
after year, or the wars in Latin America and wars everywhere else. There was nothing like that in Eastern Europe.
also, it's not politically correct to comment on, but they became national communists, which is very, very important. We
Yeah,
can go through the different
yeah,
phases for each country,
right,
but it really was, for the first time in the history of Poland, it really was a Polish,
right, right,
it was a vast, what, 97, 98% Polish, okay?
right,
And Eastern Europe, as at the end of, and because of forced involuntary migration of Germans and other minorities, they became national states,
right, right,
homogenous states, something that had never happened before,
no,
okay?
no. Now, of course,
These are things people don't want to talk about,
that's right,
okay?
that's right. And of course, now, of course, everyone's now anti-communist. Everyone hates the communists. So you pick up kind of a Hungarian newspaper and they say, here's some expose of the life of luxury that János Kádár lived. And I said, oh, let me look at this luxury. And I said, oh, this was his summer palace. Well, this looks like just a small, house in the country. A lot of Hungarians had that. And reasonably well-off Hungarians in a little house in the country where they spent their summers. I'm looking for this palace, with beautiful animals, peacocks running around to show us the sleaze and corruption of communism. It's nothing. He just had a nice little house in the country where he spent the summers, and he liked hunting. Well, a lot of Hungarians like hunting. It's a very good hunting country. A lot of great wildlife in Hungary. And Kádár used to like that, but I don't see the evidence that there was a great deal of corruption. I mean, people want to think that because everything about communism is bad, but I don't see the evidence for this widespread corruption.
Well, I mean, and this is one of the problems that you see popping up all over the place is that there was an enforced egalitarianism, and there's something to that, okay? Because what we all see today is the richer are getting richer and the poorer
Right.
are struggling even more. And that was one of the, I was a very young man, okay, when I first went to Poland. But that was one of the things that struck me right away is that this isn't a very rich place, but I don't see a lot of rich people.
No, it does have rich people, but I think that's a very important point that
And I'm not advocating that. I'm just
right.
giving
No, but I
an
think that was
observation.
important that um, that there wasn't that kind of, oh, hey, we've reached the top and therefore we should just enjoy all the good things of life. I mean, there was a little bit of that, but nowhere near as much as the West would like to present it as. No, they didn't, wolf down caviar for dinner. You know,
Well,
relatively
there
modestly
was
for
something
political
called
leaders.
PEVEX in and the acronym stood for internal export, which everybody liked to play with that. And it's actually kind of funny. But, luxury goods, a carton of cigarettes,
Yeah,
a tube of toothpaste,
yeah, yeah,
a roll of film,
yeah.
a Bic pen. I mean, this is what they had in these shops, okay? Because the domestic market didn't, and a country like Poland had, even during the worst times, they had a lot of access to the West because of the diaspora. But when they had a certain I don't remember the Polish vodka brand, but it was for only for export, so they could buy their own vodka as an export, okay? And it was like really cool and all that. But I mean, I can remember people giving a carton of Marlboros
Yeah.
as a gift, and it was like, oh wow, you went to the import-export shop, which was a big deal, and you had to pay in hard currency, not in Polish currency.
Yeah.
And so I mean, maybe for some people those were luxury goods, but from I came from a middle class family. That's like what you go into a 7-Eleven for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're gonna watch out for the what happens in the Czech Republic. I think there are a few little
Prizes.
tricks up the EU sleeve down the road.
Yeah, well, if
I don't
anything,
think Babiš is going to be. It's going to be a plain sailing for Babiš to form a government.
I think he will eventually make it, but
Yeah, I
it's
just think so too. But
but it
there's
will
going to
be
be all sorts of things down the road that he's going
yeah,
to have
yeah,
to
but
do.
what it is going to be, it's going to be a test case where they're going to be showing this is just as far as you can go.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, yeah, I find most of these people to be imbeciles, but they do have self-interest, and
Right.
sometimes it
I
will
think
overcome
that's
their
right.
lack of
That's right.
intelligence.
Now, so they're going to tell Babish, you are not going to form a coalition with these people. These people who express any skepticism about NATO and the EU. That's out. If because otherwise, this cases, that could get quite nasty for you. After all, with looking at the legal documents, and Pavel is kind of looking. He's getting advice from his lawyers.
You got a nice little agro empire
Yeah,
here.
exactly. You don't want to
Wouldn't
lose
want to see
that.
anything happen to it now.
Exactly. They're going to do that. They're going to then and they'll tell him who can and who cannot join this coalition government. So I don't think at all that Babiš is going to be teaming up with Orban and Fitzo anytime
Yes.
soon.
Euro democracy on the march.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, everybody, that's our wrap for Sunday. Okay, we're going to be here tomorrow at 10 o'clock Eastern time for our live stream. Please send questions in advance.
Yep.
Okay, we'll reserve the last 20, 25 minutes if we get some really good questions. And,
Yep.
and we like to shout out your name.
Yep.
And
Yes.
thank you. Okay, we
Absolutely.
acknowledge that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
If
Exactly.
you
No.
want to play pranks on us and all that, I just turn off the comments. So
Yeah.
and that could be at the expense of people that actually have something nice to say.
Right.
Other than that, again, thank you, George, for all of the items that you set up here. Again, I want to stress, I mean, I'm very flippant on this podcast, but somebody did some work here, okay? I didn't. I didn't do it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And there has to be something put in the tip jar. And this is the point that Buddy has been making for some time. And he feels, well, people aren't listening to me. I'm talking, my mouth is moving, and yet people don't seem to be
My, my
reacting.
my mouth is moving, but my stomach is growling.
That's right. That's what Buddy keeps making this point. So if you have anything lying around, big wads of money, big, pots of coins, cyber, crypto, all these things that I don't really understand. Everything just straight into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. Oh, Buddy's really he's getting agitated. We're very grateful for all your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and above all, we'll get Buddy to be in a less growling mood, in a more amicable mood. I don't think it's going to happen. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.